Less than 1 month until these four teams will be back together in Ithaca, New York, competing for an ECAC championship. We've got some hardware to hand out this afternoon from the Palestra as Brown, Cornell, Penn, and Yale square off in the 2019 Ivy Classic Gymnastics meet. Those are your four teams, the four Ivy League schools that sponsor women's gymnastics, and sitting by is the trophy to be handed out here at the Palestra in just a few hours' time. Kevin Kopp and Brianna Wixkowski with you. Bree, anytime you get a championship-like atmosphere, you have a trophy to hand out, it takes the energy up another level. And when you look at these four teams this year, Brown, Cornell, Penn, and Yale, you really do get the feeling, looking at their scores, like this truly is a meet where anything could happen.
Absolutely. This is going to be a really competitive meet as we're in the second half of the season now, moving towards ECAC, since these are all conference competitors. This is going to be a really, really fun meet. Like you said, the energy is going to be high just because they have that trophy to hand out, but it's also going to be a great assessment of what ECACs might look like in a couple weeks.
It's a great point. So everyone certainly wants to win today, though the big one takes place in just under a month. That'll be March 23rd in Ithaca, New York. Yale made it easy last year. They won them both. And that is where we'll start right now, looking at the Yale Bulldogs who begin on floor exercise. We are already underway with a bang here. Cornell is on vault, Penn is on bars, Brown is on beam, and Yale getting things started on floor with their junior Emma Firmstone.
Big pass for her, a really strong finish too. You always like to see the jump at the end of a tumbling pass. It really is an exclamation point for the athlete, and especially to end with her last pass with that is just great to see.
So that was our first look at the defending champs. Here is Cornell. Claire Hacklick, who is a late add into the vault lineup, doing a pretty good job for the Big Red.
Absolutely, that was a really big vault for Cornell, and controlled landings are going to be huge today, and that's really what's going to separate first from fourth place, I believe, and just a small hop on her landing, and that's exactly what you'd like to see.
Again, by the numbers, Yale enters today as the favorite. They are ranked 46th in the nation right now with a scoring average just a shade under 194. They have the highest high score this year. They've gone 194-125 this season against New Hampshire. Let's look at the rotation today. We are in rotation number 1, where Cornell starts on vault, Penn on bars, Brown on beam, and Yale on floor. The teams will rotate vault, bars, beam, and floor. You've got to do them all, and even though we are on Penn's home floor today, this is a true neutral meet, so Penn doesn't get the home order. That was drawn by the Cornell Big Red, though, you know, when you factor the crowd into it, certainly Penn does get the advantage of being here in the Palestra, Bree.
Absolutely. You can see a bunch of Penn fans throughout the stands, everybody in there in their Penn gear and everything, but we have a good amount of fans from different schools as well. We heard them cheer when they took the floor earlier, so there's definitely a lot of energy.
There is no shortage of that for sure as we get our first look at Brown on beam, and this is sophomore Emma Hansen after an opening 9-7 from Julia Green, so a great start for the Brown Bears. The other thing that I was going to mention is Penn has almost an additional advantage. Yes, they're on their home floor. They've also, this is their 4th straight weekend here at home, which is very unusual to have 4 meets in a row at home. So there's no doubt that they are used to the setup here at the Palestra. So we'll talk some more about that when we check in with Penn, but right now Hansen trying to finish up on beat.
An excellent job, and it's definitely difficult to come out, especially early in the lineup as an underclassman, but she handled it really, really well.
Well, Julia Green, you had a senior starting for Brown on beam, which is always a good thing, especially in this kind of extra intense atmosphere, and she began with a new season high, so Brown off to a great start. Now let's go back a moment ago and check in with the Quakers, our host school, on the uneven bars.
Looks like her hand slipped just a little bit. She just didn't quite grasp the low bar when she went back for the straddle back, but she recovered really well and had a really big Tekachev there. And finished with a solid double layout.
Penn opened with a really good opening score from sophomore Libby Garfoot, a new career high 9.75. And those first scores, especially, you know, you already alluded to it, Bree, in a meet like this, as we go back and check in a moment ago with Cornell on vault, in a meet like this, the margin for error is so low that if you can get that first score is almost the most important score of the entire rotation, because it really has the chance to set the table for everything that follows it.
Absolutely. The first score, like you said, just really sets the tone for the entire lineup. And typically what you'll see with the first score, it's a little bit lower than maybe the other scores, or even, you know, you watch a really great routine and it might score 9.6, 9.7 when you think it deserves a 9.8. And that's just simply because that's the first girl in the lineup, and she's just going to be scored a little bit harshly. So her job is really to just get up there and hit the best routine she possibly can and start the momentum for the rest of the lineup.
So we go back to Brown now after a 9.65 from Emma Hansen. Here is senior captain Morgan Hagenbooth.
Handspring layout, step out into a back layout 2-foot. A little bit different. You usually see a handspring layout, step out series on beam, but the feet together definitely adds another element to it. And a great landing. Moving to Penn on bars, we see a really nice uprise there. We were watching her in warm-ups. An uprise isn't something you typically see in college, but she executes it so well, you know, why not put it in the routine? It's something really different. The judges don't see it a lot at all.
I think that's another thing that factors in too, especially, you know, in terms of difficulty, but also variety in a 4-team meet. Anything that you can do to distinguish yourself from 3 other teams which are going to be cycling through, always you feel like gives you a bit of an advantage in a 4-on-the-floor type of competition like this.
Absolutely.
Back to Cornell on vault. I believe that's it for the Big Red in their first rotation, with freshman Donna Webster in the anchor spot. So we'll have a team score for Cornell momentarily. Meanwhile, let's go back over to Yale on floor, and an excellent start.
Wow. That was a huge double pike, and from a round off as well. Also something you don't usually see.
This is Jade Buford, who is one of my favorite gymnasts in this conference. She is terrific to watch on floor exercise, and we'll see her again on vault, bars, and beam, as she is an all-arounder for Yale and such a valuable member of this team as a senior.
And she has so much power, and you could see that on her last pass, the front full to punch front layout. That front layout was so high, and actually was higher than the front full.
By the way, just a moment ago, that Cornell vault we showed you was freshman Donna Webster, their anchor, who led the team with a 9.8. That's a terrific way to cap off a 48.750 and a very good score for Cornell to open on vault.
That's exactly what they were looking for Cornell.
It looked like Buford got a little bit twisted there on her third pass.
Yeah, she just didn't twist it all the way around, and hopefully her knees are okay. Sometimes landing like that can be a little bit jarring to the joint, so hopefully she's feeling all right and can bring it back for the other events.
Yeah, they absolutely need her, and that's actually following a 9.225 from Charlotte Cooperman, so, you know, really wanting Buford to go out and do her best. Had a great routine going there, just looked like one leg slipped out from her.
Yeah, just a little bit.
This is a moment ago from Penn on the uneven bars.
And it was a great routine, and Penn is just so solid on bars, and we'll be seeing that today, and we have seen it the past 3 weeks that Penn's been at home. We've been seeing their bar scores just increase every week.
That was Rose Hoffman, actually following a fall from Kelly Flavin. So now 2 to go, but a very good last 2 in this bars lineup for Penn, and that's Allison Frommer and Jordan Menino. We got some really terrific gymnasts in the back end of their lineup. As Breeze mentioned, Penn has really looked confident on bars here at home. They've looked confident on all 4 events. I think they're going to be very formidable. Obviously, anytime you get to have a competition like this on your home floor, it helps. But, Penn is really set up well to compete here. Absolutely.
And I think, like you said, having not necessarily the home rotation advantage, but the fact that they are in their own arena, that this is their own equipment, and the fact that they've been on this setup for the past 3 weeks can definitely help. I've never competed 4 home meets in a row, so I'm sure that's at least very relaxing for them to know that they can at least just compete on their own equipment.
And checking in with Brown here, unfortunately a fall from freshman Sophia Petrillo. It will be the first fall of the afternoon for Brown. It does mean they have to count a 9.425 for Morgan Hagenbuch, which is a little lower than you want to carry. 6 gymnasts compete on each event. You count the top 5 scores, and a fall is automatically 5/10. So now some pressure on Brown's Cassidy Jung in that anchor spot to get it back. Let's go over to Penn on the uneven bars and sophomore Allison Frommer.
And this has just been a huge routine so far. Her release moves were so big, a really big dismount, and a solid stick. Exactly what Penn was looking for.
You can tell by the reaction what that meant to them, and it was well-deserved. A great routine from Frommer. And now over to floor for Yale. The routine we brought you a moment ago was Jade Buford. She scored a 9.675. So here is Rebecca Chong in the 4th spot. She's got a season best of 9.85 this year. Yale can really, it's almost a little disappointing to start on floor if you're Yale, because this is an event that they can really knock out of the park.
Yeah, and obviously they're a really big double back to kind of end her routine with, and that's just a testament to her power and what she's capable of to end with such a difficult skill at the end of her routine.
2 more to go for Yale on floor. It'll be Alyssa Firth and then their senior Kiara Elaine. The Penn reaction that we saw from Allison Frommer was rewarded. It was a 9.8 for Frommer. That matches her career high. It's a new season best mark and well-deserved. And now the bars anchor for the Quakers is sophomore Jordan Menino.
It's a good toe hack. She bent her legs a little bit. Looked like she just didn't necessarily trust that she was far enough away from the bar. And it looks like she was supposed to connect that into a shoot over, so she kind of improvised a little bit. Decided to go with a shoot over hand instead.
And that's a really bad break for Penn as Menino has to come off of the bar. And now Penn will have to count a fall on bars. Flavin had a 9.025 earlier in the rotation, and it looked as if they had captured all of that momentum again with the 9.8 from Frommer, and unfortunately just unable to get it over the finish line.
It looked like she was just rushing through everything a little bit too much. You know, her release move looked really great, and she just didn't necessarily trust it enough. And then from there, it was just kind of rushing through the routine. So we'll see her come back here and just a little bit more patient on that blind full, which works out for her and goes into a nice double tuck.
And meanwhile, we check in with Brown on beam, and not good news here either for the Bears. This is senior Cassidy Jung in the anchor spot, who also had a fall earlier in this routine on her series. So Brown, like Penn, will have to count a fall in the opening rotation. And that really puts you behind the 8 ball, because when you have 4 teams, Cornell is off to a hot start. Yale is probably not at their best right now on floor, but you know, it's hard to count on every team to give up those big chunks of scoring. So if you give up that 5/10 and have to count a fall early, you really have to do something special the rest of the day to make up for it.
Absolutely, that is really difficult. And personally, I think bars and beam are just really, really difficult events to start on, because they just require a little bit more finesse than vault and floor do. You know, when you're excited and you have a lot of energy, that can really play to your favor in floor and vault, because those are the 2 big power events. But when it comes to bars and beam that require just a little bit more flow to them, when you have all those nerves and all that energy, it can kind of work to your disadvantage. And I think that's sort of what we saw with Penn and Brown on bars and beam.
So we have one team still left, and that's Yale. We've had a long delay here after the floor routine from Rebecca Chong for the judges to talk things over. So,
looks like they started her at a 9.8. There's a start value issue.
And so she ends up scoring a 9.475. That will count because Yale had a fall earlier, 9.225. And right now, Cornell is in great shape. They hit their 6 vaults and got the heck out of Dodge.
Absolutely.
And let everyone else kind of struggle at times through this first rotation. So we still have 2 floor routines left for Yale from Alyssa Firth and Kiara Elaine that are going to be very critical right now for the Bulldogs.
A huge first pass for Yale. I mean, that was a front double twist to a punch front tuck. The front double twist is an E skill, the most difficult skill in the book, and to be able to connect it to something as well really is just going to spike her bonus. A great leap. I think leaps are a little bit underrated. I think they can sometimes be a little bit more difficult than the tumbling itself, but leaps are something that the judges really look at and can be a big source of deduction for some athletes, but Yale's been looking really strong in their dance elements as well. And I think that was the floor routine that Yale was looking for.
So Alyssa Firth trying to get Yale back on track, and now setting the table for the terrific senior Kiara Elaine. Unfortunately, Elaine, I think, may be a little banged up, as this is the only event that she'll be competing today for Yale, but boy, is she special to watch on floor. She's got a season and career high 9.9. There's the Yale fans trying to keep their team in it here down in Philadelphia. About a 3-hour drive from New Haven, and trying to see Yale repeat as Ivy Classic champions. Yale won it last year for the first time since 2005, 15th time overall for the Bulldogs. And they did it in style last year. 195 score for Yale, and a program record on bars when they went above a 49 on bars. So Yale's got some great memories from this event.
Yale is really fantastic on bars, and I think that's something, for me personally, competing against them for the past couple years, they have always been a standout team on bars, as well as Penn. And I truly think that the, I don't know what it is. I feel like the Ivy League schools are just really talented at bars, but Yale does have a very strong bar lineup.
9.8 for Alyssa Firth. So let's see now. Here is the critical routine from Kiara Elaine. And this is what Penn was unable to do. After they had the 9.8 on bars, they were unable to hit from their anchor and drop that low score. So now up to Elaine to hit for Yale.
Opening with a really big double tuck. Front layout, front full, just so easy for her. She danced out of it. And ending with a double pike, and that was definitely the routine that Yale wanted. And that's definitely going to be a big score, especially coming off of that 9.8.
So The senior in the anchor spot, Kiara Elaine, steps up when Yale needed it, though the Bulldogs still are going to have to carry a 9-4-7-5, and this should end up awfully tight between Yale and Cornell for first at the end of one rotation, but it's like leading at the end of the first quarter. There's still a lot left to come here as Cornell rotates to bars, Penn to beam, Yale to floor, Yale to vault, and Cornell to bars when we come back. We'll have your scores at the end of one rotation when we continue from the Ivy Classic. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. That is what everyone is competing for today. The Ivy Classic trophy was taken home by Yale last year, and the Bulldogs open in second place, 48-4-7-5 for Yale on floor. Cornell starting in first with a 48-7-5-0 on vault. Penn and Brown each having to count a fall, and they've got some work to do. Penn 47-9 on bars, Brown 47-4-5-0 on beam. So let's take a look back at Cornell, who we didn't get to see too much of live, but this is a great start, Bree, for the Big Red to open in first place on vault.
Absolutely. This is a really, really great advantage that Cornell's going to have. Starting on vault is definitely an exciting rotation to be able to end on floor, and Cornell really hit it out of the park.
Penn on bars, really just some inconsistency here from the Quakers. Their good routines were very good, highlighted by an excellent 9-8 from Allison Frommer, but they had some trouble with a couple of falls, including one from their anchor, Jordan Menino.
Yeah, it's always difficult, and as we spoke about before, bars and beam can be difficult events to start on. As we were talking about before, the energy in here is just insanely high, and sometimes it's a little bit too much to start on the events that require just a little bit more control.
And so Penn, they are on their home floor, but have some work to do here. Brown also always tough starting on beam. It's one that, you know, the old adage goes, everyone has to do it eventually, but to start off that way is a tough thing to do, and Brown got themselves into some trouble having to count a fall there, as they had falls from their last two competitors in their lineup. Again, the good score is good for Brown, but just unable to sustain that momentum.
Absolutely, and yeah, like you said, it's so difficult to start on beam, but we're hoping to see that Brown can kind of pull it back a little bit on floor. Floor is a great event to be able to pick up your momentum because it is really exciting, it's fun to watch, it's fun to do, so hopefully we'll see Brown kind of bring it back.
And speaking of floor, that's where Yale got to open. The defending champs looked very solid, highlighted by some big scores from their last two competitors, including a 9-8-2-5 from Kiara Lane. I think you thought this was a little low.
Yeah, I did. I was a little bit disappointed in her score because I thought she had a fantastic routine. Sometimes that's just the nature of the beast with your first event. Sometimes the scores can just be a little bit low all around. And, you know, sometimes you just simply don't agree with the judges, so.
And so as we get ready for the second rotation, the question now becomes, can Cornell keep up this lead? They lead by just under 3/10 over Yale after a 48-7-5-0. They will be on the bars. Penn goes to beam, Brown to floor, and Yale to vault. I think it's so interesting when you look at the best score of each team this season. The average can tell you so much, obviously. It's an average of everything that you've done. But at this time of year, you know, this is kind of the push to the postseason. So I start to look at the high scores. What have you shown that you're capable of this year? I think what's really interesting is all of these teams are within a couple of tenths of each other at their best. Yale, 194-125. Cornell has gone 194. Brown and Penn have each gone 193-9. So shows you how evenly matched we are today. And Cornell out in front will be led off by senior Kelsey Kerfurst on bars.
It's always great to have your leadoff gymnast be a senior. She has definitely the most experience, and she's doing a really great job in this spot. And that's a great start for Cornell on bars, and that's definitely going to keep their momentum going from vault.
It's obviously a long wait after vault. You're the first one done, and when you have all that momentum, you know, you just want to get back out there and keep it going. So credit to Cornell. As we'll go over to Yale, who will start things off with Anna Jennings.
A great tuck full Yurchenko. She had a really, really great landing for that. As we spoke about before on vault, just the small hops are pretty ideal for the landings, and that's exactly what she just showed.
And over on beam, freshman Lauren Just leading things off for Penn. The freshman had a career day here last Sunday. She had 2 different career highs, including a 9.75 on beam.
And we just saw why she earned it. I mean, she just had a really fantastic handspring layout, step-out series. No wobbles at all. She's looking really solid. And a punch front tuck right to a beat jump. And she just looks so confident and so comfortable up there, and that's so important when it comes to beam, because it can be so nerve-wracking to be up there, especially when you're one of the first gymnasts in the lineup. But she's doing a really fantastic job and staying really calm and collected. That's definitely the routine Penn wanted to, pick up their energy from bars.
Quickly over to vault, and Jade Buford.
A front. Front vaults are always really difficult because you have a blind landing, and especially a front with a pike, because you're kind of coming in straight legs, but again, she had a fantastic landing for that as well.
You just saw the reaction there, and let's go back and look at this one. This is Evelyn Patient up second for Cornell.
Big stick. You can see why the team was excited.
And how about this Patient, who, by the way, was also subbed in after the warm-up as an alternate on beam. She has only competed bars a handful of times this year. Her best score all season is a 9.3. And so this has not been her event. They put her in a, in this type of atmosphere, and she delivers in a big way for Cornell. Over to Penn now on beam. Up second is sophomore Darby Nelson for the Quakers.
Handspring layout series. She had a little bit of a bobble, but kind of just worked through it a little bit, so didn't look as off center as maybe it was. And a front toss to beat jump. She's looking really solid as well.
By the way, Lauren Just, whose routine we brought you a moment ago, had a 9.75. That matches her career high.
It's an unfortunate slip of her foot after the back tuck.
And we'll go over to floor for the first time this rotation and check in with senior Morgan Hagenboot after an opening 9.675 from Alyssa Gardner.
It looks like she slipped a little bit on that pass as well. Didn't go for the skill that she was supposed to, so we'll probably see that reflected in her start value.
So Penn and Brown continuing to have some difficulties here early on. Meanwhile, we go to Yale. This is following a scary fall from Jessica Wong on the vault a moment ago.
Yeah, she was doing a Yurchenko, and when she was on the vault table, her hand just slipped out from underneath her. She still went for the skill. She just landed on her knees, so it seemed like the landing was okay. It just looked a little bit jarring when her hand slipped on the table. But I commend her for still going for the skill. Sometimes that can be the best thing to do, is just to follow through. Even if something kind of doesn't go to plan beforehand, that can sometimes also just be the safest option as well, just to kind of stick with where you're going.
Yeah, hoping that she's okay. They've got her listed in the next 2 events, so she's a big contributor on this team and obviously a big part of their plans down the home stretch this season. We will go over to beam now and check in with the Quakers. And this is sophomore Darcy Matsuda following the fall from Darby Nelson.
Solid start to the routine. And she's been looking really great the past couple weeks as well. She's been a really solid competitor in Penn's beam lineup and definitely producing the routines that they'd like to see.
Yeah, she's got a really elegant way about her, I think, that lends itself well to beam.
Absolutely, yeah. She just has a lot of control over her skills, and you can kind of tell she also has great air awareness, so she can tell where she is in the middle of a skill, and that definitely works in her favor when it comes to competing beam.
Well, let's pick up here on floor with freshman Abby Walsh.
And it looks like that was a really solid routine for Brown. Coming off of a 9-2, as we talked about before, the girl that just went before, she slipped a little bit on her pass, and it looked like, I can't remember if it was her hand or her foot slipped a little bit, but we saw that reflected in her score, unfortunately.
Let's check in a moment ago with Cornell on bars and Kristen Lunowicz.
And by the reaction Cornell had, it was a fantastic routine, and anxiously awaiting the score for that one.
Cornell is wearing it out right now after jumping into the lead on vault. They have put up a terrific bars performance, a 9.85 from Lunowicz. That is a new season best. Looking at Penn now on beam, this is Nicole Swerbalis, a senior. Penn had their senior meet last Sunday, as this is not technically a home meet, but you know there's a little bit of emotion there being in this home arena for the last time.
Absolutely. I mean, this is their final round of gymnastics in the Palestra, and it's definitely exciting but also emotional for them. And that was a great routine.
So Swerbalis still has one routine left here at home. She'll be the anchor on floor, but she can be proud of that one on beam as we go back over to floor for Rose Dominowski. By the way, Yale just finished up on vault with a 48.750, so that actually matches the number that Cornell did on vault, so it keeps Yale very much within the conversation right now, within striking distance of the Big Red. So I think Cornell is going to hang on to first at the halfway point. Dominowski, a sophomore with a season best 9.725.
A fall after her front layout front fall. Just didn't get her feet underneath her enough on the landing, and when her feet were in front of her, her heels just slipped out from underneath her and took a couple steps back and a fall.
So right now, as it stands, Cornell has one bars routine left. They will have the lead no matter what happens at the halfway point over Yale. As we go back to Penn now and freshman Natalie Yang following a 9.825 from Nicole Swerbalis.
And her gymnastics is just so beautiful. She's so tight. She has really great lines throughout her legs and just really extends through her toe point. She's just a lot of fun to watch.
Unfortunately for Cornell, Peyton Murphy falls on her dismount. She had a beautiful routine going and just never got high enough on the dismount, kind of rolled right out of it. So Cornell will not be able to improve their score on bars. They will lead Yale by 2/10 after 2 rotations for first place. That's a missed opportunity for Cornell to really put some distance between themselves and the Bulldogs.
And that hop on the landing was really the only obvious deduction I saw throughout that entire routine. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. She was so solid, super confident on it as well.
Yeah, great job by the freshman Yang. We have one more, and that's senior Caroline Moore. Here's a moment ago, Peyton Murphy for Cornell.
Yeah, it looked like she just, and she bent her arms a little bit on that blind full and kind of stopped her momentum going, so she couldn't get the tap big enough for the double back.
So Penn and Brown, the last 2 to finish up here in this rotation, and this is freshman Sophia Petrillo, who had a fall on beam, trying to bounce back here for the Bears.
Starting off nicely with a big double tap.
Bree, I think you were right about that dismount being the only issue for Yang. She scores a new career best 9.85. Penn putting up some big numbers on beam and still 1 to go. There's senior anchor Caroline Moore.
I would even argue a 9.85 is a little bit low for that routine. I mean, it was just so fantastic. She was so solid. Her body positions were right on throughout the entire thing. So a 9.85 still a great score, and Penn will definitely be excited to use that. But we're arguing just a little bit of what she deserves and whatnot. I think she was definitely in 9.9 range with that routine. Landed just a little bit low on that double pike.
So that is Sophia Petrillo. 1 left for Brown, and that would be Julia Green. And we go over to Caroline Moore. This should be special. Moore's last beam routine here in the Palestra. She has been outstanding on this event. 3 9/8s or better this year.
And a great series, a 1-arm back handspring to a layout step out. 1-arm handsprings are not easy to do, and especially making that part of your series, just because pushing off the 1 arm offsets your balance. But she's looking really confident. Wow, that's all I can say.
Everything you would want it to be from Caroline Moore here in her final time in the Palestra.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know what the judges are going to take on that. That was fantastic.
Beautifully done by Moore. She'll be a threat in a couple weeks' time for an ECAC beam title, no doubt. Finishing up on floor now, last routine before we are officially halfway through the Ivy Classic, and this is senior Julia Green for Brown. And the scores are starting to come up for Penn. We're seeing a big reaction. Keep one eye there as Green continues. 9.875 for Caroline Moore, matching her career high. And Penn almost a 49 on beam, 48.950 for the Quakers.
Just a little bit of a low landing on that round off double tuck, but other than that, it was a really great routine and something that she'll definitely be proud of.
So well done for Green and the Bears, and that will officially bring us to the halfway point of today's competition, and Cornell and Yale have separated themselves from the pack. But we've got 2 rotations to go when we come back to the Palestra for the 2019 Ivy Classic. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. These are your scores through rotation number 2. Cornell still in the lead, though Yale has cut into it. The Big Red lead by 2/10 over the Bulldogs, 97-425 for Cornell, 97-225 for Yale. Penn made up some ground with a 48.950 on the beam. Still some work to do, 96.850 for the host Quakers. And Brown with a 47.8 on floor, 95.250. So let's take a look back at our highlights from the second rotation. We'll begin on vault for Yale. This was an event where we knew the Bulldogs could be very competitive, and they were. All 5 counting scores in the 9-7 range for Yale.
Absolutely, and we just unfortunately saw one of their athletes have her hand slip on the vault table, but Yale really did a great job with bringing it back and having a great vault rotation.
Cornell really had everything going their way on bars until a fall from their anchor, Peyton Murphy, but Cornell doing what they needed to do, a 48.675 in this rotation.
A fantastic score, and I think we're going to watch them knock it out of the park on beam. A lot of sticks from Cornell on both vault and bars, so hopefully they'll be able to keep that momentum on beam.
And that was a new season high for Cornell on the uneven bars. Penn, meanwhile, they had some enormous scores late in their rotation, and some well-deserved, and perhaps deserved even a little bit more than what they got.
Yeah, I think the 9.85 and 9.875 at the end of the rotation were honestly a little bit low. The routines were absolutely fantastic. They knocked it out of the park, especially Caroline Moore. I mean, I truly don't know where the judges are even coming up with that deduction, because it was so good.
Yeah, nothing there on that series, nothing there on that dismount, that is for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I think this routine should have gone 9.9 at the absolute lowest, but, you know, maybe that's why I'm up here and not judging. So.
Still a career high for Moore, and Penn back in the conversation. Brown had some struggles on beam. They do count a fall on floor as well. And so Brown opens up in 4th. Their high score on floor coming from their senior anchor, Julia Green. So some bright moments for the Bears in there as well, just looking for some consistency as they move forward.
Absolutely, and Julia Green did a really great job at the end of their lineup as well. I mean, she was so powerful in all of her tumbling, had a little bit of a low landing on her last pass, but other than that, she had a great routine, and they're looking to move that momentum into vault.
So here we go, getting ready for the 3rd rotation. Cornell moves to beam, and obviously they are the ones to keep an eye on right now. Cornell has been out in the lead, and beam is obviously that make or break, and so love to see the Big Red continue to execute the way they have thus far. Penn will go to floor exercise, where we have seen them here at home the last few weeks. We know that the Quakers are dangerous. They already put up the high score in the 2nd rotation, and if they do that again here in the 3rd rotation, they could really cut into the gap between themselves and Cornell and Yale. Brown will be on vault, and Yale on bars, another event where the Bulldogs can really shine, and they made up some ground on the Big Red and will look to continue chipping away at the Cornell lead here in rotation 3. So that's where we stand, and let's check in with our leaders, the Big Red and junior Peyton Murphy. Murphy was the one that had that great bars routine going, just took a fall on the dismount, so a chance for some instant redemption here.
Just a little bit off center on the landing there, but she pulled it up really well. Sometimes it's not about not having bobbles at all. It's about how well you can cover them up. She's doing a great job, staying really calm and confident as the Cornell leadoff. And that's a great score for Cornell and a great way to start off their beam lineup.
So Murphy gets Cornell underway, starting things off for Yale, Jade Buford.
And I didn't see the routine, but I mean, that dismount was sky high. And as you and I were talking about before, Kevin, Yale is so great on bars. They're so competitive. They always have been. As long as I've competed against them, they've been really great. So I'm excited to see what they're going to post up today.
And here's a little more of that routine from Jade Buford. Remember, Yale in this event last year set their all-time program record on bars with a 49.075 en route to the win. And coming back live, we caught just the tail end of that routine from Darcy Matsuda, but it was a good one, good start for Penn on floor. So I think everyone can be pleased with the way they've got it going, and Penn clearly having some fun out there as a team as well. 9.675 was the opening score from Peyton Murphy, and here is Evelyn Patient. Remember, we mentioned earlier she was a late sub after the warm-up for Malia Mackey, senior captain for Cornell, who was scratched from both of her events today. So here's a big spot for Patient.
Wow, we talk about unique, and that was definitely it. I mean, I have never seen that, never.
I mean, those series are so difficult when you go from back to front, because you've got to keep the fluidity to get the connection bonus. All your momentum's going backward, and all your momentum's going forward, and then to do that from kneeling on the beam to ending up kneeling on the beam.
Right, I mean, that was definitely something different.
Wow.
And we've honestly been seeing that a lot from Cornell. I know we didn't get to see too much of their vaults, but from what I saw, just watching, they had a lot of different vaults, and I think that's something that the judges definitely appreciate, especially when it comes to a quad meet, and it's just back-to-back routines. I mean, she's doing a fantastic job throughout this entire routine. She's been so solid, really confident. Yeah, it was a great routine and definitely had some unique elements to it, which just adds a little bit more flavor.
Well, Cornell, they did a great job. Their two alternates, Claire Hacklick and Evelyn Patient, stepped in for Malia Mackey and both hit big routines. Here is Caroline Moore, who had the beautiful beam routine a moment ago. She planted dead stuck with 2 feet her first pass on floor, so you can tell she is absolutely locked in right now.
I think that was a really big routine for Penn. She had just some really great tumbling throughout her entire routine.
Back to Cornell on beam now, 9.575 the score for Evelyn Patient, and now sophomore Izzy Herseg up third.
We just talked about how difficult it is to go from back to front. It's just as difficult to go from front to back in a series. And she did it so well. I mean, the connection was great, no wobbles at all. And just got a little bit off balance on her switch leap. Her chest was just a little bit low coming out of it. So looks like she'll just move on to punch front tuck to beat jump. Great dismount. That was still a solid routine. She just had that little bit of a bobble on her switch leap, which may affect her start value, but sometimes athletes will have kind of backup plans throughout a beam routine. So maybe one of those jump combinations she did was just her backup for that, and she was able to make up that bonus later on.
Here's a moment ago, Yale first year Lindsay Chia up third for the Bulldogs.
You can see the coach is definitely excited about it. And she hit some really fantastic handstands. And on bars, that's really what's going to set athletes apart, is their ability to hit handstands and stick the landing.
Back live now for senior Morgan Hunker. Stepped in last Sunday into the floor lineup with a season high 9.775.
Finish with a punch front Rudy. And hopefully you can hear at home just how loud it is in here. There's definitely a lot of Penn fans in the audience, and they're making a lot of noise for the great routines that they've been seeing.
Yeah, it's been a tremendous atmosphere so far this afternoon in the Ivy Classic. Here's Cornell struggling just a bit on beam. Her seg had a 9.35, and so that's definitely the number Cornell wants to drop, because Yale is bringing some big numbers on bars right now. Here is freshman Miranda Lund.
Cornell's just looking maybe just a little bit tense on beam. There's definitely a lot of pressure on you when you're the leading team throughout a quad meet, and I think Cornell for sure knew that they were in first place, so it's definitely hard to, keep in mind when you're going to one of the most nerve-wracking events that event's going to make or break your first place position. So
I was going to ask, Bree, you've obviously been in a lot of environments like this. I mean, are you aware? Do you know what's happening typically, at any given moment?
I think it depends on the person. So competing for Temple, we always talked about being in a Temple bubble. And we never really watched anybody else compete. We never kind of paid attention to anybody else's scores. I know for me, I personally just I'm just so focused on what I'm doing, what my team's doing, so I never knew. And I never looked. Sometimes they'll post team scores in between events. I purposely never looked at that because I never wanted to know. Some people like knowing. I definitely don't. Because for me, it just doesn't change the job that I have to do. But it definitely can influence them if they know the scores.
Meanwhile, we saw on replay a moment ago, beautiful 9.85 routine from sophomore JC Baldovino, a new career best for Yale. They are doing exactly what Bree said they would. They are wearing it out on bars. And of course, as soon as I say that off camera, Roxanne Trachtenberg falls on her dismount. So we got caught up on Yale momentarily, but we are looking live now at freshman Sydney Craze, who has anchored floor at times this year for Penn as a freshman.
It looked like maybe she was supposed to do a jump out of that second pass. Just got a little bit tripped up on it. If she wasn't supposed to do a jump, she definitely should, because she has a lot of power coming out of it. But Her first pass was really great, had a great landing, so looks like she'll finish up with another great landing on her double tuck.
The celebrations, you can see it in the back of your screen there. The celebrations have been excellent for Penn here on floor. Now over to beam, and Cornell has lost their way a little bit after the fall from Lund. Here is, check that, here is Caitlin Green finishing up. Or Meyer, that's Leanda Dudley in the 5th spot for Cornell. So the door is certainly open right now. Cornell has been unable to sustain their success from vault and bars on beam. Yale now coming off of a fall, and here is really a must-hit routine for senior Jessica Wong.
And so far, so good. She's been really great about hitting her handstands. They look so crisp and clean. And that was the routine that Yale needed.
A big routine for Yale as they drop the fall from Trachtenberg and likely will take over first place heading into the final rotation. Let's go over to floor and Penn's sophomore Jordan Menino.
And we spoke about the front double twist before. It's an E skill, hardest skill in the book, and it's really great to see athletes perform them, especially on floor. I think they can be really exciting to see, a little bit different as well, kind of breaking away from your typical double tuck, double pike routine. And another E skill as well, back 2.5 twist. That was just absolutely a huge routine. 2 E skills back to back, and usually when you see a gymnast do an E skill, it's normally a 2-pass routine. They're not really required to do 3 passes if they do an E skill. But she had 2 E skills and did 3 passes. So when we talk about unique, that was definitely it, and extremely difficult as well.
There's the dismount from senior Caitlin Green to finish up for Cornell on beam. Unfortunately, just a really tough rotation for Cornell as they had a handful of falls, and that is going to knock them out of first place and hand that to Yale. It also gets Penn right back into the conversation with what they've been able to do. And they have 1 routine left. Senior Nicole Swerbalis moved down to the anchor spot here for her final routine in the Palestra.
Coming up a little bit low on the double pike. And looks like she'll finish up with a double tuck. A great finish for her last routine in the Palestra.
And so that will do it for rotation 3. An eventful rotation as Cornell struggles on beam. Yale takes over the lead with their performance on bars. We'll have all the scores as we enter the final rotation after a short break. We'll be back with the Ivy Classic. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Kevin Kopp, Brianna Wixkowski with you. Final rotation about to get underway from the Palestra. It's the 2019 Ivy Classic, and here are your scores through 3 rotations. Yale has moved into the lead, 48-7-5-0 on bars, and now a 145-9-7-5 for the Quakers. Penn moves to second, 145-5-2-5 after their performance on floor. Cornell, big struggle on beam, 47-4. They drop from first down to third, 144-8-2-5, and Brown in fourth, 48-5-2-5. Really nice vault rotation. We didn't get to see a lot of it from the Bears. We'll check out some on replay in just a moment. A 143-7-7-5 for Brown as the Bears are in fourth. So let's catch up with Brown on vault. A really nice performance, their best of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really great to see Brown come back on this event, and hopefully we can also see them push this momentum from vault into floor as well. Looks like they had a lot of power on that rotation, so that's what they're looking to do on floor as well.
Big story of our third rotation was what Yale did on bars. Couple of big scores, and it was a first-year Lindsay Chia that got it started with the 9-8, and then JC Baldovino, with the big 9-8-5 for Yale, and they made some real inroads and obviously took over the lead.
Absolutely, Yale so fantastic on bars, and they definitely brought their A game today at the Ivy Classic, and hopefully we'll see them end really strong on beam and kind of keep this lead that they have going on.
Yale trying to repeat as Ivy Classic champions, and then it was the other side of the coin for Cornell. Got into some issues midway through their lineup with back-to-back-to-back falls, and unfortunately just takes Cornell out of it.
Yeah, we saw some really unique routines from Cornell. We were reflecting on the judges' looks, looked a little bit confused with some of the stuff that they were doing, but it is always refreshing. But Cornell did struggle a little bit with the routines they were putting up. And
then Penn, boy, you go back to that fall on bars, you take that away, this would have been a totally different day for the Quakers, but to their credit, they are doing everything in their power to come back and make a run at the title here.
Absolutely, they had a fantastic floor rotation, and really ever since bars, they've been just stepping it up with each event, and we saw this come true and beam. They had some really fantastic beam routines, and they really brought it to floor as well, so they're just looking to close it out on vault, and you can just see how much excitement they have.
They will try to keep that excitement as they go to vault. So Penn will be the first to post a score, and it will be up to Yale on beam, which goes without saying is a make or break to try to make it and capture the 2019 Ivy Classic title. So we are just a few seconds away from getting started here in the fourth rotation. Cornell finishes on floor, Penn on vault, Brown on bars, and Yale trying to defend their championship on the balance beam. And remember, as we talked about at the start of our broadcast, the real conference championship for these schools is actually the ECAC championship in 1 month's time. That will be in Ithaca, New York. Cornell gets to host it this year, and it's these same 4 schools plus Temple and William and Mary. So that's always a big meet, 6-team meet, and that is the true conference championship for these schools. So ready to get this one underway, and it looks like we will stick with Yale on the beam, and it will be sophomore Charlotte Cooperman who leads off for the Bulldogs. As they wait to get started, let's go over to Penn and Lauren Juice, the freshman, starting things off.
Absolutely, a great start from the freshman, front. Really nicely landed as well, just a small hop on the landing. And that'll be exactly what Penn's looking for to start off their vault lineup.
Yeah, Penn probably needs their best vault performance of the year if they are going to go toe-to-toe and try to catch up with Yale here. So here is Cooperman, the sophomore, who's got a season-best 9.825 to lead off.
And this has been a great routine so far. You can see why she's earned that 9.825. She's just so calm and confident. And some athletes, when they get on beam and they're doing a beam routine, they maybe look a little nervous or really in the zone, but she's just so relaxed up there. And it's really going to influence her score as well. And you can even see her smile a little bit after some of her skills. That was a fantastic beam routine, and that's exactly what Yale wanted to start off their lineup.
So that will begin the final rotation for Yale. Cooperman will be followed by Jade Buford, Emma Firmstone, Jessica Wong, Lindsay Chia, and JC Baldovino. Looking over at Brown on bars, looks like they had a fall on their first routine of the rotation from Alyssa Gardner, and that would be Caroline Warren standing by. Over to Penn on vault. As always, moves quickly, obviously, and we're already to Rose Hoffman up third in the Quakers lineup. And the score coming up from Valerie Rube a moment ago was a 9.775. So needless to say, that will be a must drop for Penn there. Can't afford to count a fall and try to catch Yale. And speaking of Yale, after an opening 9.775 from Cooperman, here is junior Jade Buford.
She's had a great meet so far, and she's just really confident throughout all of her gymnastics, and it looks like that's holding true on beam as well, which is sometimes the most difficult event to be confident on. That's definitely a different combination, a cat leap, switch leap to straddle half. Lots of bonus in that as well. Looks like she'll finish up with the front full dismount.
Back live now to Caroline Moore.
And another fall from Penn. It looks like she just twisted really early, almost right off the vault table, and just did not get enough rotation through her flip to be able to pull that one around.
And so that will more or less take Penn out of the running, counting a fall here when they already had a lot of ground to make up on Yale. It's right now Yale comfortably in the driver's seat to repeat as Ivy Classic champions. But of course, there's more to today than just getting the win in a quad meet. They also want the big road scores. We get ready to head to RQS. It's a weighted average where road scores play really important role in postseason seeding. So there's a lot at stake here for Yale, but you know they want to be loading up that trophy to New Haven, and they're well on their way. Checking in with Macy Prescott on floor right now for Cornell.
Ended with a really strong double tuck, and that's definitely what Cornell was looking for. Their first girl up had an unfortunate fall and scored an 8.775, so they're definitely looking to pick that back up.
So here is Emma Firmstone up third for Yale.
And it looked like she went for her series, but maybe it was just a little bit off on the handspring, so she'll just go ahead and try that again. And was dead on this time, so it's no deduction if a gymnast wants to try a skill again. You're allowed to do 2 of the same skill within a routine, so it's perfectly acceptable that she just did a back handspring and maybe it was a little bit off, so she just went ahead and tried again. The only deduction that a judge might take would be a rhythm deduction. But she kept moving throughout her dance, so I think she'll be able to avoid that. And this has been a really strong routine thus far, just the dismount left. And a great routine for Yale.
Yale is halfway home, 3 beam routines left. And now to finish up the day for Penn freshman Sydney Craze.
Kind of a weird day for Penn on vault. I mean, she was a little bit crooked on the board, so she might not have gotten enough spring in her round off, and then she just flared out of her layout at the end, so she wasn't able to bring her feet around.
Yeah, and not to take anything away from Yale as we check over with Brown on bars. And freshman Sophia Petrillo. Not to take anything away from Yale at all, because they have done a terrific job today, but basically all they did was not make any mistakes, or,
right.
or one of what they did was not make any mistakes. Penn had their issues on bars and vault. Cornell obviously had their issues on beam. Brown had some issues on both beam and floor. So Yale, just their consistency did it. Now they put some big numbers up on top of that, and that's going to make the margin look pretty large here. 9.75 from Firmstone as we look at senior Jessica Wong, but just the consistency from Yale was what separated them from the other 3 teams today.
Absolutely, and I honestly have not seen Yale compete at all this season, but I can say that some of these other teams that we've seen before, they've done a lot of changing around their lineups, and that can definitely affect the way that not only the athletes perform, but the scores you get as well. And sometimes those last-minute changes, you know, someone gets hurt, something like that, you have to put in an alternate maybe the day of, or someone gets hurt mid-season. Those things obviously happen, but I think we've just seen a lot of shifting around of athletes, and I think that's definitely going to affect the consistency. So while it is disappointing to see all these falls, I'm not necessarily surprised to see it happen. And like I said, I don't know if Yale's been doing that or not, but I think something that Yale does really well is they just always are consistent. And we've been seeing that this entire meet.
And great routine there from Wong. It's interesting that you mentioned that, Bree, because we had heard that Yale was planning to make some pretty major changes, possibly to their lineup after warm-up today. So even going in last night when we got their tentative lineup, it was an expectation that there could be not just changes, because there's always, or typically, you can see a few changes here or there, but they were talking about widespread changes in their lineup, ended up not making any, and clearly it has served them quite well today. Absolutely,
and I think it always helps, you know, the athletes know the lineups before you leave to travel. And when you kind of get in that mindset, you know, if you're anchoring an event, you kind of think, okay, so what am I going to do throughout the event so I can prepare for my routine and I can put up the best score for my team. And I think kind of when coaches mess with that a little bit, it definitely affects the athletes, and that might be what we've been seeing a little bit of today.
Jessica Wong for Yale just put up a new season best 9.875. So Yale is running away with it right now. We're going to check in with Brown over on bars.
And it looks like a great routine. Her knees buckled a little bit on the ending there on her landing.
That's Maylee Costa, a very impressive freshman for Brown. It's a name to remember, as she's had a terrific debut season for the Bears. Let's go over to Yale on beam. Speaking of debut seasons, here's first-year Lindsay Chia.
And we saw her do a phenomenal bar routine earlier on, and she just kept it going with this fantastic beam routine as well.
And that will mathematically clinch it for Yale. One more routine to go, and that is sophomore J.C. Baldovino, who also had that brilliant bars routine, which gave Yale the lead, and boy, they saved their best for last. They have been outstanding on the balance beam. Checking back in with Cornell here. Back-to-back 9.775s from Macy Prescott and Donna Webster. This is sophomore Izzy Hertzeg.
And we unfortunately didn't get to see her first pass on camera, but I was able to watch it, and it was sky high. So looks like she'll finish up with a Rudy, and just had so much power bouncing out of it. This was a really great routine for Cornell. And I think this will most likely break them out of that 9.7 range.
Big news for Yale as Lindsay Chia has posted a new career best 9.875 score. Just came up for that, and that also clinches a 195 for Yale here in the Ivy Classic for the second straight year. And now a pressure-free routine for JC Baldovino, who can bring home the trophy once more to New Haven.
Switch ring beat jump is definitely a different leap pass. Switch rings are really difficult to do on beam, obviously, because you have to take your eyes off the beam and throw your head back, which can throw you off balance. But she did it so well, and she's been so solid throughout this entire routine. And like Kevin said, numerically speaking, Yale has already won this meet, but it's still important for her to finish out her routine as best she can and kind of get the best score for her. Just so Yale can see what their beam lineup can score with the hit lineup, but also for her personal RQS on beam.
Right now, this beam score already tied for the second best in program history, and Baldovino finishes it in style. Yale, your 2019 Ivy Classic champions, and they ran away with it with that performance on beam today.
Yeah, Yale did a really great job, and I think that they are definitely the team to watch out for when it comes time for ECACs.
Yeah, Yale won them both last year. They won the Ivy Classic in February, followed it up a month later in Providence with the ECAC championship. Or check that, the Ivy Classic was in Providence last year. The ECACs were here on the Palestra floor. So Yale's got some great memories here, and they've got another one as they win the Ivy Classic. But the good news for Brown, Penn, and Cornell today is they get another crack at the Bulldogs in 4 weeks up in Ithaca. And speaking of Ithaca and Cornell, Claire Hacklick. Cornell actually has put together a really nice floor rotation. They had that fall from Morgan Shaw in the leadoff, but since then, a pair of 9.775s, a 9.8. That routine from Claire Hacklick, and I believe we have one more from Samantha Henry before we officially wrap up competition this afternoon. How about this? JC Baldovino, 9.85 on beam. Yale, 49.125 on balance beam, 195.1 for the day. That is a full point better than their previous season high. They stepped it up in a big way.
Yeah, Yale is an extremely competitive team, and Kevin, you and I were talking a little bit about how sometimes when teams don't have a big name, meaning, you know, pretty much non-SEC schools, they get overlooked a little bit, but, you know, just because that this team is in the Northeast does not mean that they aren't competitive, and they're obviously posting up a great score. 49.1 on beam is absolutely fantastic, and definitely something that they should be proud of.
Just trying to stay within shouting distance of that 36. That's the magic number, the number of teams that qualify for NCAA regionals. Yale is 10 spots out at the moment, but still a month to make up that ground. And Cornell putting up some huge numbers on floor. Claire Hacklick, a 9.9, and now the floor is all alone for Samantha Henry to wrap things up today.
And I was watching her in warm-ups before the meet began, and then also in the 4-minute touch, and she's really powerful. She has really great tumbling to put out, so this should be a really exciting routine.
I think you take away their struggles on beam today, and knowing that Cornell is hosting ECACs, I think they're going to be a real factor in a month.
Absolutely. I think the beam lineup was just a little bit unusual for them, so they've had a really great meet, and we were talking before how they just really blew us away with their vault and bars lineups, and maybe just a couple of mishaps on beam, but they're really doing well on floor. So I think Yale and Cornell are definitely going to be head-to-head when it comes time for ECACs. And that was a huge routine for Cornell to wrap up their lineup with.
Yeah, it's going to be an enormous floor score for Cornell, and so they'll have that what if to think about if they could have hit beam, but you got to hit all 4, and Yale did that today. The Bulldogs defend their Ivy Classic title. We will step away for one final break and come back to the Palestra to wrap it up. We've got your final scores when we continue here on the Ivy League on ESPN. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Kevin Kopp and Brianna Wiskowski with you to wrap this one up from the Palestra. A thrilling edition of the Ivy Classic here in 2019 as we get ready to take a look at your scores through the end of rotation for some big performances by Yale and Cornell, but it is Yale that runs away with the title today, a 195-1 after a 49-125 on beam. Cornell 49-1 on floor. Terrific job from the Big Red, but dug themselves too much of a hole. They score a 193-925. Penn takes third after some uncharacteristic struggles, Bree, on vault.
Yeah, this was just a little bit odd for Penn. We really haven't seen this from them on vault at all this season, so I'm not really sure what happened. Maybe nerves, maybe just a bit of an off day for vault. Kind of unfortunate, and I think the same could be said for Brown too. Just a little bit of a weird day for them.
Yeah, Brown never really able to get on track today. They scored a 48-4 on bars and finished with a 192-2. It is above their season average this year, and they'll look to clean some things up and get ready to compete for the ECAC in a month's time. But Bree, I mean, what can you say about Yale? The work that they did start to finish, this beam lineup was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, completely. I mean, their beam routines were just so fantastic. They were so solid. Everybody went up and just looked so comfortable on the beam. We didn't really see any bobbles at all throughout the entire lineup. So Yale did a really great job, 6 for 6, and they were 6 really great routines as well. So
yeah, Jessica Wong here, a new career high 9.875. And the score they dropped, to put this into perspective, was a 9.75. That means things are going pretty well for you.
Absolutely, yeah. If a 9.75 is the score that gets dropped, then you know that just goes to show how much talent they have throughout this beam lineup and how well that they really compete, especially under pressure.
And that was Lindsay Chia, also a career high 9.875, and then JC Baldovino closes it out with a 9.85. Cornell did not go quietly. Their beam took them out of it, but boy, did they roar back on floor exercise for the 49-1.
Absolutely, they had a big floor lineup. We saw some really great tumbling, some excellent landings as well. They were just so powerful throughout their entire lineup, and we saw some big scores as well, some 9.9s out there, so that was great to see. And even though that they weren't in the competition just because of their beam performance, it was great to see them still fight for it on floor.
So once again, here are your final scores. Yale, for the second straight year, is your Ivy Classic champion, and for the second straight year, they do it by going above a 195 new season best score for the Bulldogs. Cornell takes second, Penn takes third, and Brown takes fourth. And these same 4 teams are joined in just 1 month by Temple and William & Mary to decide the 2019 ECAC title. That will wrap up our coverage here from the Palestra this season. One more time for my partner, Brianna Wiskowski, I'm Kevin Kopp saying saying so long from the Palestra in Philadelphia, where Yale defends the Ivy Classic title with a 195-1 today to defeat Cornell, Penn, and Brown. All games airing on the ESPN networks are streaming live and archived on the ESPN app. This has been a presentation of ESPN.